G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Draw with JAZZA. This week's video tutorial is on animating characters for games, in particular platformer and isometric views. Before we start, I'd like to announce happily that the team I participated in the most recent Newgrounds game jam with won. I'll play a clip so you can check that out. And if you want to play the game, click the link in the description and you can go see for yourself. We made that in 48 hours, so we're pretty happy with how that came along. And in the spirit of keeping with the theme of characters in games, we're going to be looking at two different characters in previous game jams that we made. The first is this character called Meaty Boner. As you can see, he's a skeleton who has meat all over his bones, hence Meaty Boner. It's a delightful innuendo there. And we're going to be looking at how he was pieced together. And this character, Crusoe, from a game jam we made where you play Robinson Crusoe. It's a bit of a survival game. It's an isometric view, and it's a bit of a different approach there to the platformer. Now, as with all of my video tutorials, make sure to check the link in the description to go find the reference files. You can actually access this and look at the characters, look at the symbols and all this stuff to see how they're set up and learn for yourself. So the first character we're looking at here is Meaty Boner. Now, as you see, all of his animated segments are in different clips. He's got launch, die, crouch, different crouch attacks, when he starts up his fireball, his hurt animations. This is really common in most games, if not all games. The characters have what we call sprite segments. So it's like, you know, every time that a character is standing still, it'll play the idle animation, which happens to be this one, which is just this simple standing loop. And then the programmer will tell the code to play this clip when you press the right arrow and add the properties for it to travel along a certain axis to follow, you know, and that's essentially how the games are built. Now, I am not a coder, so this is not a tutorial on coding. I am never going to make a tutorial on coding. This is purely how I approach creating art for the coder that I work with, and it's going to be different for everyone, but there are general rules that are the best thing to stick by when you're at least beginning when you're animating characters in games. Now, the first thing to remember is to keep the clips separate and to work with movie clips. You don't want graphics and not buttons unless it's very specific. You want these characters to have movie clips. Another thing that's really important is what we call the anchor point. So when I select this character, you see this little thingy here. I mean, I need a better word than a thingy, but it's the anchor point. So if I made a new symbol here, if I made this circle and converted this to symbol by pressing F8, we have the options here. I'll make it a movie clip. It's the registration point. So on these characters, it's at the bottom near the feet. Okay. Now, in animation, this thing doesn't matter at all. But when creating artwork for games, this is pretty damn important. This is where the code will find the clip and use it as like the base reference. So when you have like a character, you want the registration point to be at its feet. So as you can see here, it's right in the middle of his feet. Even on his run clip, the registration point is exactly where his feet are in the previous clip. Not where his feet are up here, but down here on the ground. That's why I use a floor reference for all of these clips, including jumps. So we have his jump mid here, where he's flying in midair. We still have the registration point in the same place all the time. The other reason that is important is because when it changes from clip to clip, it uses that registration point as the anchor. So when it goes from the stand clip to the run clip, it will match up those registration points exactly and play it from one to the other. So that's something really, really important to keep in mind. Another thing which isn't necessarily seen in these character references, but is good to keep in mind, especially when you're creating things like guns in top tower defense games which have 360 degrees, always create the object facing 0 degrees, or which would be right. facing exactly right, so that if it was like a protractor or like a compass or whatever, it's 0 degrees, and then you have 90 degrees, 180 degrees, etc. So I won't need to go into too much more detail of this character. If you want to learn more about it yourself, make sure to check out the reference files, and you can see yourself. But the last thing I will look at and show you is the different states of this character. So as you noticed in the previous clip, there was the meat version of this character, and this is the bone version. What I've done is this is the complete base of the character. So if I go into here, there's no animation, it's just the layers, right? All of these clips, so if I go into the head, this is a movie clip in itself, and each of them have 5 frames of progression. So I'm going to zoom in here and show you what I mean. The first frame is the head, just the bone, and then we have progressions of adding the meat onto the bone, right? So if I go into anything else, we have the torso, same thing. We have the upper arm, which gets bigger. So all of them have 5 frames. The registration point in these clips isn't very important. It's more the main clip itself, so you don't need to worry about that. So, you know, as you can see from this example, each have 5 frames within them. And that's so the coder can make it so when you find the upgrade to add meat, all of these parts of the body will go to frame 2, so that they can have a little bit more meat. And then the next stage of upgrade is frame 3, frame 4, and then the final most powerful upgrade is frame 5. And you can see he's got a little meaty penis right there. Hope you enjoy it. So yeah, that's basically another thing I wanted to show you, because for things like having weapons on a character, rather than having to draw each weapon as a new clip, you would have one movie clip for a weapon and then heaps of frames with all the different weapons, which is also in the Crusoe clip, which I can show you right now. So make sure to check out the reference file if you want to check that out. And then this is our Crusoe character. Now, creating isometric characters is quite different to making platform characters. Platform characters, you can do a lot of tweening so that you can have different stages and frames within those clips. Whereas here, to tween on an isometric angle is much more difficult and looks generally a bit more fake. So these characters are all animated in frame by frame, and they're set up a little bit differently. Now, you'll notice if you look at the reference file in the library, and that is something else I will point out, is you need to be neat with your library. So as you can see here, we've got our animation, our body parts, everything is categorized nice and neatly for the coder to work with. Okay, now you can see the different numbers here for Crusoe. Facing top right is 0 in the name, RC_0. Then this is 1, 2, 3. Whoops, and this guy on the left is 7. Reason being is this is just the way my coder works, but if you can imagine like this being the angles, facing this direction is where he has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's simply so that when he does his code, it works on that angle, and he uses that because for him it's simple for trigonometry. So with whatever code you're working with, or if you're doing the code yourself, you've got to make sure that your naming of different angles and things like that match with the coder so that things can work nice and smoothly. It's a real group effort when you're making art with a coder, and you've got to work around the way that they want them. So 0, 1, and 2. Let's go into number 2 here. So this is another thing that's important to keep in mind for coders, is if you want to keep things really simple for them to code to, you can use these frame labels. So if I want to be very clear about what I want him to use the frame doing, inside this clip I've got this one here, which is stand, this one here, which is run, and this one here, which is use. And he can code it so that when you hit a certain key and he's on a certain angle, it will loop within the run phase. Or if you're mining something, he can loop within the use phase. And each of these is their own clip. So the standing one is just the blank character. The run clip, when I go inside him, as you can see, has his own cutesy little run animation, which I'll loop here. There you go. So that's him running. And the last thing I wanted to show was on this character, the use. Like I mentioned before, he's got a tool here, and rather than having a hammer and then adding a layer for every object or something stupid like that, within this clip are all the different items he uses within the game. So there's hammer, axe, pickaxe, and fishing rod. My mind went blank for a second there. So that way, he can have it, essentially, have the code swap whatever frame that is on, and if you're building a house, he can code it to select the hammer, and he'll be using or building the house. If he's fishing, it'll swap to the fishing rod, and he's by a river, and he'll be fishing. So it's very much about, working out what works for the coder and the artist. And the other thing to keep in mind is consistency. So same thing as with the Meaty Boner character, these characters have the registration point all in the exact same place, so that when they swap, it's stagnant and the character stays, in the right spot. And making sure that their animation lengths of all of them are exactly the same, the motions are the same. It's all about consistency, and in particular, keeping things really orderly, structured, and simple for more than yourself to understand. When you're animating cartoons or drawing a picture, it doesn't matter what the hell, if you like to be organized and make folders and layers, then, go nuts. But when you're working with other people, work in a way that is easy enough for them to understand. I hope that you've enjoyed this video tutorial and that it's been helpful for you. Again, make sure to check out the links below to play our Game Jam game or check out the reference files, and I will see you again later. Have a good one. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. Links are below to download the original files for reference. Remember, if you animate or draw something cool, be sure to share it on Newgrounds.com. The internet's best source for animations, games, art, and music. Until next time, see you later.